All right, got my trailer hooked up to my truck. You can see the articulated dump truck in the background right there. Actually heading out this morning, it's pretty early to go look at a Suzuki Carry. I looked at it actually 2 days ago on a road trip to visit some friends. I liked it. There were some big things I didn't like about it, but changed my mind. I'm heading back this morning. It's about a 200-mile road trip out there, so head out. Hopefully everything goes smooth. Well, there's my new little Suzuki Carry. It came with a name. Her name is Ruthie, so it's gonna have to stick. Pretty awesome little machine. Heading out of Ruthie's old home and going to her new home now. Pretty excited about this. Got some carb work to figure out, a few other little things, but it's got a lot of nice things done to it already, and it should be a great little machine. So heading out of this fancy community, heading home. It was kind of funny to get into the community. I had to show my ID, and they had to be very serious about the security guard. No small talk with that guy, even saying have a nice morning. No response back from him. What a prick. And but the person I bought it from was super nice. And but I just drive like an older F-250 truck right here with an old beat up car trailer. Yeah, the guy had a really bad attitude, the security guard. Funny thing, heading out of there, there was like a Porsche Cayenne and a few other super fancy Porsches driving around the community. Here I am with this Ruthie in the back here, and this beat up old Ford, but hey, it gets the job done. Well, got the little Suzuki Carry home, truck towed it no problem. I think the trailer's heavier than the Suzuki. Kind of funny thing is, we'll get into price later on the Suzuki towards the end of the video, but it was a bit more than the truck and trailer with mud tires and all. But I buy my stuff broken, like this thing had a slipping transmission. I swapped into 5-speed, so I get my stuff mostly for really good prices. The little Suzuki Carry is cherry shape. Has a little running issue, a few little problems I need to sort out, but it was well worth picking up. All right, let's go into a few more details about the machine and we'll unload it off the trailer. So the previous owner, this was their COVID project. They bought it right when there was kind of lockdown kicked in, and they spent a lot of time in their shop. Spent a ton of time on it. They're gonna send me some photos of it originally. It was, I think, a white like most of them are, and it was kind of banged up and rusted up with some dents. They pulled all the dents, did all the body work. Did something else. It's not rhino line, and I'll have to figure out in the receipts what they put on it, but it's like a bed liner, heavy duty. Gray throughout the cab, inside and out, black inside the bed, all the frame, underbelly of the cab. I mean, I saw it at their house and I could see that they put a ton of time into it, but when you go through this thing, like up under the dash is all rhino lined. Everything has been done up extremely well. You know, it's got a heavy duty front bumper up front. They installed a Warren winch. It's got aftermarket springs up front, lift kit all the way around, aftermarket rims, like brand new heavy duty mud terrain tires, stainless exhaust. There is a ton of stuff they've done. Even went through like this little lockbox and replaced the seals in here and then rhino lined all that. Inside of here, there's a nice little bag with a bungee cord for holding down stuff in the back, like a bungee net, and tie downs in their own little bags. I mean, everything is really clean overall in this thing. Only thing that's gonna have to grow on me, started redoing the interior with red kind of like alligator skin vinyl. And it's a little too jazzy for me, but I don't know, maybe it'll grow on me. Like I said, it has a few little issues, and one was a running issue. I think they did all this time and put a ton of money into it, and it started running worse and worse, and it's got like a carb issue. Engine sounds great, but it idles at 2,500 to 3,000, just running pretty high. And basically, I think they got frustrated with it. They went in, tried to change the needle height on it, tried to tune with the carb mixture and stuff like that, and they couldn't figure it out. Either run super high RPM or won't idle at all. So that's how I got it. I think it's a vacuum leak going on. They also installed an aftermarket fuel pump because the original one went out. So I'm gonna go through and double check that we got the right fuel pressure. I think we probably got some vacuum leaks going on this machine. It came with the new carb rebuild kit. They never put it in. I think they just got discouraged and basically onto a different project now. So that's where I came over and found it on Facebook Trader and picked it up. We'll go into a few more details later in the video, what I thought I was getting and what I ended up getting. All right, so I just drove off the trailer up here. This is how it ran when I test drove it. It's idling about 3,000 RPMs, and it will kind of overload and almost flood out, and you have to pump the throttle and open it up, and then you can almost smell some unburned fuel. It'll clean out, and then it'll start running super high RPM. You put a load on the motor, and it seems like it starts basically flooding. So she did change out the fuel pump. The original one stopped working. I'm kind of wondering if it's running too high of a pressure. I think it's got a vacuum leak, so we might be pumping too much pressure to the carb and giving it too much air. So I'm gonna pop open the seat cover here. This is how you get to the engine, and take a look at that carb. So both seats come out so you can access the engine, and there's another plate in the back of the bed. But this is basically the hood. Got radiator, alternator, airbox, and the little tiny carb. Remember, this is a 666, maybe 660 cc, 3-cylinder. Look around this carb. I hope to get it running properly in this video, but time will tell. So another thing, the jetting could be off because the muffler and the exhaust system's been opened up, and there's a K&N air filter in here now too. So I wouldn't be surprised if I have to order some new jets and rejet this thing. You can see it's got a bunch of raw gas sitting in here. It smells pretty gassy, and inside the carb down here you can see some gas in the entrance of it. So my first thought is possibly that fuel pump's overpressurizing the system. It's basically a slightly overcomplicated motorcycle carb. It's a Mikuni on here. Overcomplicated, has more vacuum lines than a motorcycle. Being the simple float that it has like a motorcycle carb, I wouldn't be surprised if it couldn't handle over a few PSI fuel pressure. So one thing I noticed when I was looking at it the other day to test drive it was, you know, super high idle, smell gassy. I don't think the choke's coming off, but I think that's a circuit that can get sticky pretty easy. Being under the vehicle, it can get kind of gritty and dirty. But one thing I noticed was the throttle cable looked like it was adjusted out pretty tight. And by checking it with touching the gas pedal and the throttle cable, as soon as I tap the gas pedal, I can feel the throttle cable moving. If that's held really tight, you're never going to actually let that butterfly go all the way closed on the idle adjustment screw. So gonna back that off and see what else we can do. It's literally like a motorcycle carb, like I said earlier, but just a few extra vacuum features for an automobile. I got the airbox off, and most motorcycles that are street legal bikes run really lean like that, so it's not gonna run right with the airbox off it right now, but it's running, and I was able to back down the high idle, add a little extra play to the throttle cable. Now I'm gonna pull off the back engine plate, and so I can fiddle with the rest of the idle and check lines, vacuum lines, and things like that. So I'm gonna climb in the bed next, and this is where you actually take off the rest of the hood. All right, nice thing is it actually has electronic ignition. I wasn't sure if this is gonna be points or not. And the distributor cap actually has a ton of this white buildup on here, so we're gonna scrape this cap. Also was basically out of water, so that's why the choke circuit wasn't working. I've always wanted one of these things. The vans are pretty cool as well. But about 22 years now is I think when I first saw one over in Holland. And I don't know if it's gonna be one of those vehicles that the novelty wears off in a year or two, or if it's gonna be one of those things that keep around. If it's something I keep around, Eddie, I could see you actually owning one too. Yeah. So we got the other part of the engine cover off. This is the passenger seat. Here's where you can add oil, get to the spark plug wires. Pretty easy. It looks like simple to do a timing belt. But basically this thing, when I was at her house running it for a little while, the bottom radiator hose took a long time to warm up. And you know, it's revving pretty high. So I finally got over here to check the radiator cap. A little discouraging. I don't see any antifreeze in there. So radiator looks kind of sludgy, kind of rusty sludgy. So hopefully it's not a head gasket issue. We'll find out. Let's see if we get this thing fired up again. gasket's going to be a culprit on this thing or not. Interesting. Most of it I had to really drove it maybe a block of the lady's place, but it was revving so high that I didn't really want to drive it much. I'm glad I didn't drive it any more than I did, being the fact that the water pump looks like it's leaking. But I want to get a timing belt for it anyways and do a timing belt kit, so I'll do the water pump when I'm in there, just because I don't know if it's an interference motor yet or not, and who knows when that belt was done. Surprisingly working pretty good. It's got a little bit of a lag spot, quarter throttle, but the previous owner mentioned that she changed the needle position, and I think she lowered the needle, so it'd make it for like a hesitation running lean. So we're gonna mess with that reload kit in there. But surprisingly, it's not a powerhouse, but it's kind of like a scooter truck. It kind of gets you by.
It's getting around good.
Surprisingly, not that bad of a little machine. Gets me run low on water. Trying to flush the cooling system.
I think it's time for some tea, dude.
Yeah. Oh man. A little loud. I'm gonna try to work on that muffler she put on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were pulling, accelerating this pretty steep hill. Pedal to the metal, of course, but it's not too bad.
Doing all right. I like this.
Yeah.
That shifter setup's cool, man. Everything's nice and just basic. It reminds me of our old Toyota vans.
Oh yeah, with just micro.
Yeah.
A little smaller.
Yeah, way smaller. This would like fit inside of one of those vans.
It's funny, it's really not taking that much to get used to the...
Your left hand shifting's good, dude.
Yeah, it actually seems to be pretty natural. This glove box is like something you get at like a McDonald's Happy Meal. It is thin.
Oh, micro.
All plastic.
Well, what year is this thing?
A 1990.
It hasn't broken. That's better than my Volkswagen glove box.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I'm actually surprised. This thing actually does pretty good. Pretty fun. I'm not sure if the novelty will wear off on it in a year or so, but it's not like I'm driving it every day. I guess if you had to, you could.
Yeah, mock it out. We'll build another one just like it on there.
Dude, look at the size of that transmission. That's the bell housing area for the flywheel and clutch. Transmission, somewhere probably still some transmission, but that goes to the whole transfer case right over here. So that transmission's like from here to like here for gears. Thing's dinky.
Good find.
Yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of work, but man, I think it's gonna be a fun little machine to have around. I gotta translate all the Japanese. Even this up here, I thought this was like for parking into their gated community, but it's all in Japanese over here. Just probably a parking sticker or something, but pretty cool. So I'm pulling the carb back. Right, got the Mikuni carb out. It's looking kind of dirty, kind of crusty. There was way too many vacuum lines and fuel lines and water lines going to it. More complex than it probably needs to be. But we're gonna clean it up and see if we can actually get this thing running any better. Okay, buddy.
Yeah, I gotta do it all by myself.
Okay. So a lot of the Japanese screws on this kind of stuff in motorcycles like made out of like butter metal. Don't mind the dogfight in the background. And anyways, these were wicked tight. They were not coming out of here. So what I've been doing is putting a screwdriver on here. Hit them a few times, just straight down. And it keeps you from stripping them out. Save that butter metal. It worked pretty good. Oh yeah, got some chunks in there and some chunks right up here. Whether that's enough to keep it from running, we'll see. We'll see if the jets are clogged. Now, I'm hoping this has some chunks in it because this is my idle jet, and it would be nice to see it dirty because it would be a clogged idle circuit. No, that's not showing. Maybe that's not an idle jet. It'd just be almost just kind of keeping the old floats and everything. I don't really trust any of the new stuff, you know? So I got it figured out, and it's actually idling really well now. I'll show you guys the engine bay here. Basically, I cleaned the carb. That didn't change anything. I started looking for vacuum leaks. I found a vacuum leak going to the EGR, which I'm gonna probably just delete anyways. It's an old vehicle, and it's probably better stripping some of that stuff off of here. Still ran better, idled around 2200 RPM rather than 3000. But then I found this little fuel cutoff solenoid on the side of the carb. You could unplug it and plug it in, and it would sputter out if you unplugged it, but you could plug it in, but it seemed kind of intermittent and kind of funky the way it ran. So this one right here, this line came off the back of the carb on the back side, came right over to this thermal switch for the EGR. And I just plugged this one off. And the other line that goes off of here in the back goes to the vacuum advance for the distributor. That's fine. This is part of the EGR circuit that was a problem. And when I started doing some vacuum leak down tests, this canister right here is some type of diaphragm or check valve or something. No matter what, this thing just kept having a major leak down. So I just pulled it out of the equation and capped the line. And that's what helped run better, but we'll go back to the carb and I'll talk about what actually made it completely idle down to 1000 RPMs and run good. So on top of the diaphragm cap here, there's a ground screw. And it goes down to this fuel cutoff solenoid. And that's the part that I pulled out and finally got to idle really well. This one actually unthreads, and there was an O-ring down there, and that was cracked. But also, I don't think it was open and closing properly. Basically, when you have the key on or the vehicle running, I was able to unplug this wire connector right here, kind of sputter out and die. You could plug it back in, you get it to start. But it was kind of just running funky, so I was like, well, it seemed to be working, but I took this out, cleaned it with carb cleaner and compressed air, the little solenoid, put it back in, and that actually took care of the idling problem. Idles at 1000 RPMs now. Oh, another thing, the previous owner actually had the cap off of here and adjusted the needle. I think she thought it was running really rich because the choke wasn't coming off because she was running it without much water in it, which is a bummer. Hopefully the head gasket's not shot. But I actually raised up the clip to the middle setting. I'm going to probably one more setting because there's just a tiny hesitation around maybe quarter throttle, but it's running pretty good now. So I haven't done too many cold starts on this thing. It's actually only about 60 out right now, and I'm not really sure if I pumped the accelerator a few times or not, but we're gonna get this thing fired up. I'm gonna warm it up and then drain the old nasty water. I've been trying to flush the radiator. And the radiator, I think, has a small hole or split. I'm going to take it out and see if I can solder it and repair it. So I'm going to start it up and warm it up. It's also super loud. My brother's giving me a motorcycle exhaust off a WR. And it sounds way better with that, much quieter. It's just too bassy right now. So, there's the split right there. Let's try to solder that up. There's the solder repair, and I pressure tested it and it seems to be holding just fine. Alright, it's idling nice, about 1000 RPMs. Take it out and see how the power does. Still gotta get used to this shifting.
sucks.
Not expecting that to work. Windshield wipers work and washer pump works. Nice, man. All right. So at the beginning of the video, I mentioned I'd talk about price and I'd talk about the machine I was planning to go pick up and what it turned out to actually be. There's some pros and cons to this whole purchase, but we'll go over that in fine detail here and wrap up the video. Basically, in the ad, I saw a machine that was at $8,000 originally, which seemed like a lot of money. Keep in mind, side-by-sides are like $12,000 to $20,000. So this thing has a windshield and heated cab. In Washington, these things seem to be slowly going up in price because they're street legalized, but most importers will have them from $5,000 to $10,000 depending on condition. The $5,000 range will be like bone stock with ripped up seats and some stuff like that. 6, you're getting a little bit better condition ones. 7, some of them, yeah, like I said, run up to 10, which is ridiculously overpriced. So anyways, I went to go look at it. She marked her price down to $7,500. Said it had major carburetor issues. It would run at like 3,000 RPMs. It was boggy. It just didn't run right. A Suzuki Carry 1990 with a 660, which is key because year before this there were 550s. And it had a 4-speed with a high and low range transmission. And it said in the article, in the ad, it was a locking rear differential model, which was key for these things. They don't have much articulation. They spin out pretty easy. I went there to look at it. I looked it over, talked her down a few $100 on it to $7,300 because there's a few more issues I saw on it. And I was getting ready to sign the title. I was like, wait a minute, it's got the locking diff button, but I didn't see an actuator on the axle. I was like, sorry, I really want a locking diff model. Spent the weekend at a friend's, thought about it more. I was like, man, but that thing is in such good shape. 95% of the driving it's going to be doing is gravel road off-roading, some trails, and it's got a nice winch up front if you do get stuck. But it's going to be like parts running back and forth to town, maybe a few little recycling runs, stuff like that. So I thought about it. I was like, man, this thing's in such good shape. I'm going to run back and probably pick it up on a Sunday. So I ran back over there, looked it over, offered her $7,000. She took it. One thing I didn't realize the first time I came to look at it was we went over to the machine. She started it up. It ran at like 3,000 RPMs. I noticed it wasn't heating up much. And I didn't run it for too long, but she popped over the engine cover on the driver's side. And I was kind of new to these machines. I've never really looked at one close up. And I didn't realize one of the first things I usually always do is check the oil and check the coolant. Make sure there's no white sludge indicating like a head gasket issue or anything like that. And I didn't really know where that was, and she already ran it for like 5 minutes, so I did not know where the radiator cap was even to access this thing, nor did I really want to pop it off after it's been running for a while and get a bunch of hot boiling water out. So I ended up looking it over and then picked it up on a Sunday. Didn't realize until I got home, pulled off the other seat cover, and it was out of water, which is a bummer. And the radiator looked kind of rusty and gross sludgy in there. Not a good sign. I sure hope the head gasket is not an issue to come, but I've used to do mechanic work, so I've done like 30, 40 head gaskets. This should be a piece of cake to do. Well, hopefully it's not an issue. But anyways, I got it home and realized that not only the carb issue it had, which I was told about, but I don't see how someone could own this thing for over a year and not realize that the water pump leaks like a sieve, and basically they've been running probably pure water in the thing because of that, and it probably sat outside over the winter and the radiator split. It's kind of a bummer when you feel like you kind of got burned on a purchase. Like, I try to be super honest with people when I sell something, and I price it accordingly because it's got issues. I tell people about everything I know. It's too bad not everybody has that protocol, so that's kind of a bummer. But moving forward, I have it. I was already planning to do a timing belt on it because it's a timing belt motor, and I don't know what the state of that belt is in. So I ordered a water pump and timing belt, and that's coming in pretty soon. So I'm going to do the timing belt kit, just know it's dialed in, run it some more. And I actually bought another aftermarket radiator. The radiators for these things are super expensive, like $250 to $350. I'm not going to pay that for it. I would rather adapt something newer, modern. And I'm going to actually do a fan delete, so it's not spinning a fan at 6,000 to 7,000 RPMs off the motor. I'm going to do electric fan, an aluminum radiator off of a side-by-side. I got a bunch of parts coming. So in the future video, we'll be installing that. It's going to save me some cash, but it's going to be an upgrade to give more room to the engine bay as well. All right, if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. Give it a thumbs up. You know, I'll be posting more videos about this thing and taking on some trips pretty soon here once we get it all dialed in. Till next time, take care, you guys. Bye.